Good day, everyone. My name is Ranianti binti Daman with metric number 264832. Today, I'm going to present my research entitled Evaluating Heart Failure Predictors using Quantitative Approach. My supervisor name is Dr. Saadi bin Ahmad Kamaruddin. So these presentations consist of introduction, problem statement, research questions and objective, significance of the study, literature review, methodology, data analysis and finding, conclusions and references. For introductions, heart failure is a clinical syndrome caused by structural and functional defects in myocardium, resulting in impairment of ventricular filling or the ejection of blood. The most common cause for heart failure is reduced left ventricular myocardial function. These functions of the pericardium, myocardium, endocardium, heart valve, or blood vessels alone or in combinations is also associated with heart failure. So some predictors of heart failure include age, anemia, high blood pressure, level of the creatinine phosphokinase enzyme in the blood, diabetes, ejection fraction, platelets in the blood, gender, the level of serum creatinine in the blood, level of serum sodium in the blood, smoking, and the follow-up period. For the problem statement, heart failure disease is present all around the world. Only the percentage in Africa continent is absent due to no population-based estimate. Forecast for the diagnosed with heart failure is lacking. That is 17 to 45% of patients' deaths happened within 1 year of hospital admittance, and 45 to 60% of deaths take place within 5 years of hospital acceptance. So heart failure is the global leading causes of hospitalizations, which results in the burden for each level of healthcare. So my research questions are: first, what are the relationship between all contributing factors of heart failure towards the death event? And second, what is the most significant factors that make a human heart to fail in death event? And the third is, which factors alone can be used to predict the survival of patients with heart failure? And my research objective includes: the first, to identify the relationship between all contributing factors of heart failure and death event. Second is to determine the significant contributing factors towards heart failure and death event. And the third is to develop a model using the significant contributing factors towards heart failure from the second objective. And for the next part is the significance study. So this study is going to be an indicator to healthcare organizations to know whether a person with heart failure with such predictors can survive or not. The second is the significant contributing factors towards heart failure is known. And the third is this study can predict the survival rate of heart failure patients in a hospital with the developed model. Next is the literature review. So an author used the methodology of retrospective cohort study, Kaplan-Meier curve, a log-rank test, and multivariate Cox regressions to evaluate the predictors. And from the study, we can find that heart failure patients with anemia tend to be older age, had lower hemoglobin and sodium level, and higher creatinine value. So anemic patients tend to have a worse survival status, And anemia is a significant risk marker, but it is not an independent predictor of mortality in the current study. Another author used multivariate modeling and meta-analysis, and from that, the result is that lipid abnormalities, cigarette smoking, physical inactivity, and dietary influences other than sodium play an important role in cardiovascular disease causations. So the elevated blood pressure has the greatest effect on population's health. High blood pressure is a major risk factor for development of cardiovascular disease. And another author used a multi-chamber volumetric quantifications, and it can be found that right ventricular ejection fraction is an independent predictor of major adverse cardiac events. Another author used survival status and hospitalizations were determined in the heart failure patients cohort. And from that, they found that platelet activity is heightened in 22% of outpatients with stable heart failure symptoms. The degree of platelet activations not related to clinical disease severity, and the current methods to assess platelet activations do not appear to predict the outcome. And for the methodology, in order to achieve the first objective, I used the descriptive analysis, normality test, and Pearson correlation coefficients. To achieve the second objective, I used the decision tree. And to achieve the third objective, I used the binary logistic regressions. And all that methods, I used SPSS to analyze it. In this research, my independent variable includes the age, which counted in years, the anemia, the high blood pressure, the CPK, which is the creatinine phosphokinase, the diabetes, whether the person have diabetes or not, the ejection fraction, which is the percentage of blood leaving from the heart at each contraction, and it is count as percentage, and the level of platelets in the blood, the gender, level of serum creatinine in the blood, level of serum sodium in the blood, whether the patient is smoking or not, and the time for follow-up period. And the dependent variable is the death event. Okay. For my data analysis and finding, we can see that the average age of the patient is 60.83 years old, with minimum 40 years old and 95 years old as the maximum. The ejection fraction have 38.08% with minimum value of 14% and maximum value of 80%. The average of the time for follow-up is 130.26 days with 4 days and 285 days as minimum and maximum value respectively. Next is the normality test. We can see that the approximately symmetric data are the age, anemia, diabetes, and follow-up period, which is the red circle. The highly skewed data are the level of serum sodium, level of CPK, level of platelets, level of serum creatinine, and for the moderately skewed, the data involve agenda, ejection fractions, high blood pressure, smoking, and death event. Next is the Pearson correlations coefficient analysis. So from the whole table 6.2, we can conclude that age, ejection fraction, level of serum creatinine, level of serum sodium, and follow-up period are significant to the death event. This result is from the significant value for each correlations. So when the significant value is less than 0.05, then the variable is significant. Next is the decision tree. I choose the chi-square automatic interaction detections as the growing method. I include all the independent variables, and for the result, only time for follow-up, ejection fractions, and diabetes are included in the decision tree. So this is the decision tree. I divide the picture into two so that we can see it easily. For not 0, the number of people and percentage who died or survived is given. The splits occur in order of importance. Here, the time for follow-up was the most significant factor regarding survival, so the parent note containing all 299 patients splits into two child notes, one containing below 55 days for follow-up and the other is above 55 days for follow-up. From there, we can see 91.3% of the patients are survived if they have follow-up periods above 55 days. From note 2, ejection fractions is the most significant factor. The ejection fraction splits into two which are below 30% and above 30%. By comparing both Note 3 and Note 4, we could see that whenever the percentage of blood leaving the heart at each contraction is above 30%, the patient has high probability to survive. And it does not matter if the persons have diabetes or not. The patient still can survive if the ejection fraction is above 30%. And for the binary logistic regressions, we can develop a model that consists the most significant factor results from the decision tree earlier. So the developed model is ln in bracket of p over 1 minus p equal to 3.848 minus 0.021 for the time for follow-up, minus with 0.062 times the ejection fractions, and plus 0.058 times the diabetes. So in conclusions, I could conclude that all my objectives are successfully achieved. For the objective ones, my conclusions is that my conclusions for objective 1 is that age, ejection fractions, a level of serum creatinine, a level of serum sodium, and follow-up periods are significant to the death event. And for the objective 2, by using decision tree method and chi-square automatic, And for my second objective, by using decision tree method and by using chi-square automatic interactions detections as the growing methods, follow-up period, ejection fractions, and diabetes are significant contributing predictors towards heart failure and death event. And for the third objective, a model is developed. So this is my references. So that's all from me. Thank you.